Hey guys, it's Peyton, and this is AP Sports Podcast again. This is the first edition, I guess, of the NBA portion. I mentioned doing it last podcast, and today I just kind of felt like doing it. And so I know it's really early in the season, so a lot of this is just kind of speculation. There's not much to back my stuff up on. So, granted, a lot of this stuff could change, and it probably will change, honestly. It's a long NBA season, 82 games. But I'm really excited, and I think it's gonna be a great year. And so I wanted to this video, or Spotify, listen, whatever platform you're listening to this on, I guess. I wanted it to be about kind of the Eastern Conference, where a lot of the notes that I did earlier today. And I expect a Western Conference video similar to this, just predictions, and that sort of stuff. But one team that I really like this year is the Miami Heat. Their first game, they played the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are not that great, but they won pretty convincingly. I think it was about 19 points. And one player that really played well that game was Justice Winslow. He had 27, and he looked really solid. I feel like the first couple years he was in the NBA, it was kind of... I feel like he didn't seem like he was having a place in this roster. So it's really nice to see him kind of perform well. He was seen as a great defender. He's still a great defender, but he's developed his offensive game a lot. And that game he had 27 points, which is, I mean, obviously great. And actually today, I waited to make the podcast until this game finished because of this. I wanted to see how he did against the Bucks, and the Heat actually ended up beating the Bucks in overtime. So that Grizzlies game might not be very impressive, but they just beat the Bucks. The Bucks are a playoff. They're probably top 2-3 team in the East. The Bucks, if not number one. And Justice Winslow in this game, he did not shoot well, which is gonna happen to everyone. But what I really like about Justice Winslow is the fact that he was able to play 41 minutes for this team. Those are big minutes. It was an overtime game, so they clearly trust him, despite his poor shooting performance. And he was able to get 4 offensive boards, 13 rebounds overall, 7 assists, and he was plus 16, and he had 10 points. So I really like him because even when he might not be having the best night, he's able to get other guys to succeed, and that's shown in the assists and his plus minus this game. Also, another thing I wanted to talk about is Chris. What's his name? I'm trying to find it in my notes right now. Kendrick Nunn, the Heat's 25th overall pick. I mean, he has looked great. He had 27 and 24 minutes against the Grizzlies. That is ridiculous. And tonight he got the start, and he had 18 points. So I see him being... He's definitely went under too many teams' radar during the draft process out of Illinois, because he has been very good for the Heat in these 2 games so far. And that doesn't mean he's going to be great the whole year. I'm just saying it really does look like he has an opportunity to succeed with the Heat because he's getting minutes and he's playing. Bam Adebayo looks a lot better. He actually had 8 assists. And I like how the Heat team passes. They create for other guys and they pass out of the post. And I like that. They've also got Kelly Olynyk, who I think is a great player. He's a solid 3-point shooter. I really like how he's developed that part of his game. He has not always been that good at it. And they just have a lot of hardworking guys. And they've done all of this without Jimmy Butler. So when Jimmy Butler comes back, honestly, I could see this Heat team competing. I see them as a top 3 or 4 team in the East behind the Bucks, Sixers, maybe throw the Celtics in there or the Pacers. But the Heat are a good team, and they're getting slept on hardcore right now. And I mean, the Heat are just their roster's ridiculous. Goran Dragic this game against the Bucks came off the bench. He is like last year, 2 years ago, you would have said he's their best player. Maybe Hassan Whiteside, but just the general improvement in the Heat organization. They've got a great coach, Eric Spoelstra. I really like what they're doing, and Goran Dragic was able to come off the bench and get 25. So it's just you never know who the contribution is going to come from, and when it does get to these clutch moments, it looks like they're fine without Jimmy Butler, but even then, with Jimmy Butler, he makes them even better. And this Heat team has really improved. I like their coach. I like a lot of the guys on the team, and I haven't even talked about Tyler Hero, who's looked good, although he had a poor shooting performance against the Bucks. He is a good shooter, and he has put up good numbers. And I don't expect him to shy away from any opportunity. He looks pretty confident in his shot, and I'd expect him to be good. And I mean, people thought that he was going to kind of be a bust not a bust, but he wasn't going to live up to the 13th pick, and I think he's looked great. And people were kind of hating on the Heat for picking him there because they said he wasn't a good defender. But honestly, he might not be a great defender, but he is good enough on offense, and three-point shooters are always really valuable, as you can tell with Buddy Hield getting paid recently in Sacramento. And so next, I wanted to talk about the Hawks for a little bit. I'm going to try and get to every team and just talk a little bit about them and how they're set up for the season. Trae Young is really good, and he had 38 against the Pistons, who they ended up beating. But the only drawback I see with the Hawks is actually Trae Young. As good as he is on offense, and I understand he can score, but Derrick Rose, who came off the bench, was guarded by Trae Young, and he had 27 points on 11 of 16 shooting. Now, I know Derrick Rose is a good offensive player, but I don't think he's worth 27 points a night. So Trae Young is probably one of the weaker perimeter defenders, I would say, in the league. Just because he's not super big, and he's also, he's not very tall. You can get away with it if you're, Brandon Ingram, super thin but long. He's not long or, big. And so that could be an issue on the perimeter. And I could see teams late in big games getting switches on him with bigger guys or just taking a guard at him because they're generally bigger. And so I think that's what's going to hold them back from being an elite playoff team. You need good defenders because in the NBA, a lot of these teams that succeed, it's all through good guard, small forward play. And I see him later in games getting ISO'd against, and I just think that's the Hawks' one drawback. But other than that, I mean, they've got John Collins. They've got a really good young core. John Collins I really, really like. He was just about 20 and 10 last year, if you rounded his stats up. But this year I think he can get over 20 and 10. Their fourth overall pick, DeAndre Hunter, of course, looked good. He had 14 points. Jabari Parker, I think, he's slept on. He had 18. And I really think Jabari's good. I watched him in preseason too, and he's looked good. He could be poised for a little bit of a comeback, but I feel like there's too much depth on the Hawks for him to get enough meaningful minutes. Although he did have 18 points in the first game against the Pistons. One guy that I think, of course, will improve, but he hasn't had much going in the positive direction, I guess, basketball-wise, since his time at Duke, and that's Cam Reddish. I feel like I don't hear enough good stuff about him. It's all about what he could be, not what he's doing. And a good example of that is the 1 point he had opening night on 0 of 6 shooting and 1 for 2 from the free throw line. And I don't think he's going to be a bad player. I wonder what's up because maybe people are just blowing up expectations. But I really do think he's got the tools to be great, and I don't see what's holding him back. And maybe he just needs time to develop. Who knows? That's kind of what I'm thinking for the Hawks. And so the next team is the Sixers. The Sixers, I think they can compete in the finals. I'm not saying they're going to beat the Clippers or Lakers or anyone, but I think they can make it there, and they might win because they've got a great center in Joel Embiid. Not a lot of teams have that, and Joel's not just an offensive center. He's great on defense, gets boards. I really like Joel, and this team overall. I think, opening night for them at least, they beat the Celtics, and I would say the Celtics are like a kind of rival, I guess. I mean, and the Sixers looked good. They added Al Horford. I think that's a good addition. But I think the issue that they have maybe one or two issues. And I think one of those issues has to be who's going to take the last shot. They don't have a guy. You don't have the guy. That is the only issue with having Embiid as your best player is if you're down 3, I don't want to be. You have to create a play for Embiid, or he goes within the flow of the game. But if it's man to man, who's the guy that's gonna win if you need three? And you'd think Tobias Harris. At least that's who I'm thinking right now. But he's never been in that situation, other than maybe in Orlando for a little bit. I don't see them really succeeding in really, really tight games because Ben Simmons can't shoot. But I really do like how they added Horford. That provides them a nice three-point component on the power forward position. Another thing that I think could hold them back, obviously, with any team, injuries are a big deal, but especially with the Sixers. They probably have one of the best starting lineups in the league, but behind them they have very little depth. So an injury here could hurt them drastically, or a long series in the playoffs does not bode well for them. I feel like they get tired, and it's a tough process when you got a guy out in your starting lineup anyways, but even then, if your bench isn't good, it's going to impact you even more. And so next I want to talk about the Magic. I actually like the Magic. One of the issues I have with the Magic, I don't think that they develop players well. And so that's going to come up later on when I'm talking about them. But, they opened up the season beating the Cavaliers. Not a good team, but, a win's a win. So I see them this year being similar to last year, just kind of sliding into the playoffs barely or being right on the outside. And, I really want to see some of these guys improve, especially Jonathan Isaac, because he's been in the league like 3-4 years, probably 3. I think this is his 3rd year. And last year he took a pretty big leap, and he's got all the physical tools to be great. I just don't know I don't like the Magic's staff and how they develop young talent, because I think Jonathan Isaac has every tool to be a great NBA player. And I guess they have developed Aaron Gordon, but that's only because they had a lack at power forward, small forward, and they played him at power forward, which I think he should be a small forward personally, which is what they've shifted him to now, more or less. But I do like the Magic's depth. I like how they rotate a lot of these guys, but I think that you need to rotate these younger guys in more. I don't think you keep everyone even. I think Markelle Fultz has looked good in the time that he's played, which honestly, I don't even know if he deserved that playing time. So I really like how they gave him the playing time, because that's purely based off because he is not better than a lot of those players out there because he can't shoot. And he went 0 for 3 from 3, but I like that he's taking them. And just feel like once he gets his confidence back, he'll be there. And the shoulder thing was really weird. Some stories I heard was that nothing happened, and it's all mental. I also heard that he got in a motorcycle accident. It's really hard to know what happened with him, but whatever it is, I really hope he gets over it, because I like Markelle Fultz and I want him to succeed. And he did look good in the season opener, including a kind of nice dunk that was enjoyable, of course, to watch. But I like the fact that he's shooting, and I like the fact that he's getting playing time on a team, because he would not get that with the Sixers, I don't think. I don't think that they already lack shooting with Ben Simmons as a guard, and I don't see them adding anyone else that can't really shoot. And so I think that he's headed in the right direction, but he's the only young guy that is headed in a semi-good direction, and even then he could be headed in a far better direction. I think that the young talent they have is not getting enough playing time. I think the Magic, they need to choose. They need to choose to either trade some of these guys for good, solid veterans, or just younger players that have, of course, established themselves. But a lot of these guys, they're still developing, and I don't like how they're not playing them. For example, they've got Nikola Vucevic, who I think they should trade, personally. I don't think they should be going for the playoffs. I think they have a lot of just raw talent that they need to work on developing. But at the same time, I could see him trading away the talent for better players, and I wouldn't argue with that. Playoff games are fun. It's good to be in the playoffs. You never know what can happen. And so an example here would be Vucevic, as I mentioned a couple seconds ago, and they have Mo Bamba, who only played about 10-15 minutes in the first game, and he looked good with Markelle Fultz. but Vucevic is really hindering Mo Bamba's ability to play. And I think Mo Bamba is one of those guys that you need to get playing time. He's just athletically gifted and physically gifted. He's got all the tools to be great at center, or honestly, he could even play power forward like Porzingis because he's got a great shot. Of course, I think he should play center, but I could see him being like Porzingis, and Porzingis is a great player. But Porzingis got a lot of playing time as a young player, and I think that is what's holding Mo Bamba back here, and so I think they need to develop him. Jonathan Isaac got less minutes than Al-Farouq Aminu in the season opener, and he's on their bench, so I don't know why he got more minutes than Isaac. I just think that hurts his development. And then DJ Augustine over Fultz, I feel like I like how they're easing Fultz in, but even then I feel like sometimes you just kind of got to throw him into the fire. And so the Magic are a team that I like, and I'll really be seeing what they do around the trade deadline time. I would hope they make some moves, but if not, I don't see a lot of those guys panning out in Orlando if they're not going to get playing time. Then the Bucks. There's not much to talk about with the Bucks other than they're a great team. Giannis is of course great. I see them succeeding in the playoffs. That's the only thing they can improve upon is the playoffs. And maybe getting past the Sixers to the finals. But I could see Giannis being MVP again. I honestly, he's that good. So that's about it for the Bucks. I mean, I like they signed Chris Middleton again. They're kind of just running it back with the same team minus Malcolm Brogdon, which is a loss, but he was injured for most of last year anyways. All right, so the Charlotte Hornets, of course, they came out big night one. Not playing the best team in the world, but that's okay. Devontae Graham out of Kansas, who, honestly, I'm not even sure when he was picked, but that means I obviously either did not watch the draft very well or he was not a very high pick, and I don't think he was a very high pick. Should probably have looked that up, but that's all right. And PJ Washington, the Hornets, 12th pick, he has looked promising. I don't want to say great because, of course, it's only been 2 games, and the Hornets are 1-1 in those 2, with a win opening night for them. And this year, the Hornets have been such a bad drafting players, so I just want to see those 2 guys succeed. And they aren't willing to spend much go over the luxury cap. So this offseason, they really, really hurt themselves by signing Terry Rozier. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he is an overpaid player for sure. But I do like the ads of PJ Washington and Devontae Graham. The Celtics are an interesting team. They're 1-1 right now. Gordon Hayward, I don't think he's ever going to be the Gordon Hayward of old, but I still think he's getting a lot better. That first game they played against the Sixers, he had 25 and 15 in the next game. And he shot in good efficiency in both of those games, and I think Jaylen Brown got paid. I want to talk about this. The first game, it looked like it looked bad for the Celtics. It looked like they paid a guy to get 10 points a game. Did not shoot well. But the next game, they invested in him a little bit more, let him play 38 minutes, which they held him to like 25 minutes the first game. And he played 38 minutes against the Raptors and played pretty well. He had 25-ish points. And even if he averages 15, this is the part that I don't like about how much they paid him. Even if he averages 15, 20 points, he's still not going to be worth that much because the Kings paid Buddy Hield less. And he averaged about 20 last season. So unless Jaylen Brown... And he is getting more playing time this year, so it is possible that he averages over 20. And points aren't all that matter, obviously. But I think Buddy Hield's 3-point shooting and defense is more valuable than Jaylen Brown's athleticism. And Jaylen Brown is a great player. I just think Buddy Hield is more valuable with his shooting. And I'm not saying Jaylen Brown's a bad shooter. And, I mean, Kemba for the Celtics, he hasn't looked good, but I don't think that he's going to stay in this 30% shooting range, he's definitely going to pick it up. I don't think that's realistic for Kemba. He's a great player. I just think he's going to kind of mesh with some of these guys. Even though they played together over the summer, I just think he's got to mesh with a couple of these guys more. And there's no way he stays in the 30% on these field goals. The next team is the Bulls. This is going to be a longer podcast, of course, because I'm going through a lot of teams. But I'm kind of trying to speed it up, I guess. Zach LaVine, of course, looks good again this year. Improvement, probably. He looks good. I know they lost the first game, but I think him and Lauri Markkanen. Lauri's looked very good. I think him and Lauri Markkanen, they both have all-star potential. I don't know if they're there yet, but they might. If they win games, they could get voted in. Well, maybe not voted in starters, but picked for the all-star game. I could see the Bulls maybe sneaking in as the 8 seed in the playoffs with some injuries occurring, maybe. But they're probably about an 8 to 10 seed this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little higher, a little lower. And it looks like Kobe White was a great pick. I really like Kobe White. He went to UNC. He's really fast. Of course, has the best hair in the league. It's like this just puffy hair. It's kind of cool, I guess. And he was a good pick. In the first game, he had 25, and second, 17. I think he's a great scoring punch off the bench, and I would not be surprised if at some point this year, him and LaVine were on the court at the same time. And the reason they aren't right now is because their playing styles are so similar. As they're both basically shooting guards. Although Kobe White's listed as a point guard, neither of them are looking to distribute the ball. They're looking to score. And that's not a knock against them. A lot of great players look to score. Kevin Durant looks to score, for sure. And both of those guys are really good. And I would not be surprised if they eventually play together. But for now, I think it is good that he's on the bench. And I think and he's getting minutes on the bench too is another thing. It's not like the Magic where he's getting 10, 20 minutes a night. I really like what they're doing with Kobe White. And just the Bulls in general are trending in the upwards direction over the next couple of years. The Wizards, not much to say about the Wizards. Similar to last year. I just don't think they're going to be great. But I would not be surprised if upon John Wall's comeback they get a little bit of a boost. Because people forget how good John Wall is and was. Hopefully he comes back the same because he was a ton of fun to watch. And I really like Rui and what they're doing with him. They're letting him shoot. I like that. He took 20 shots first game. And I like Rui. I don't know. I like the Wizards. But I just don't think it's going to happen for him this year. And so next we've got the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie Irving made a lot of noise night one for the Nets, losing in overtime to the Timberwolves but having 50 and no turnovers. That is ridiculous. But these games are what concern me. His shot chucking, and granted, shot chucking, of course, once again, not a bad thing. Some of the best players in the world do it. And he's one of those guys that does it. He's one of the best players in the world. I don't see it helping them in the playoffs. I think this is the reason the Celtics lost in the playoffs last year. And the 50 points that he got is great, of course. And I see him going off on a couple of these games, getting 50 or 60 points. I would not be surprised if he was like Devin Booker level in some of these. But last year in the playoffs, he shot a really poor percentage because he was forcing shots. And of course, he had that game against the Spurs when he was with Cleveland. He's a great player and he can score very well. But I feel like in the playoffs, he takes it upon himself to kind of show out. And that's why I feel like him and LeBron were a great team because LeBron understood this and was able to get him the ball when he was open, but also would enable himself to shoot. LeBron would. He would shoot those important shots, and he would allow Kyrie to kind of get in the flow of the game instead of just Kyrie coming up and shooting. And I don't see this being a successful format for the Nets in the playoffs, but I really like Karis LeVert, really like Spencer Dinwiddie. A lot of these guys on the team I'm a big fan of. And if he can just learn to trust his teammates, I really see them going far. The Raptors are an interesting team. They're not going to contend this year, I don't think. I think they'll be in the playoffs, Siakam's great. He's just so good in transition and on defense. I see them being good, but not great. I really like the Raptors' kind of set offense. They do like a sort of dribble drive thing and get to the paint really often because they leave either Gasol or Ibaka on the outside, so they're able to drive really efficiently and then pass out for a three from a guy like Fred VanVleet. The Pistons, I could see them either being like an 8 seed in the playoffs to 10 seed, similar to the Bulls. I really like Drummond. He's a good player, gets rebounds, plays hard. And I see them doing all right, but I'm not going to say they're anything special. The Cavs, they're going to be at the bottom of the division, I think. I like Darius Garland a lot, actually. I don't know if he's going to be good, but I really do like Darius Garland. And I think it was weird of the Cavs to pick him with Colin Sexton already, but, I mean, the Blazers have McCollum and Lillard, and it works. I'm not saying those two are ever going to end up like them, but it's a similar situation. Two smaller guards. Not the best defense. Colin Sexton's better than Garland. I feel like Garland still needs to fill out a little bit. But I do like the Cavs and cheering for those two guys, as well as Chetty Osman. The Pacers. I think that the Pacers will be a solid team this year. I bet you they're in the playoffs, top 5 seed. And although they lost opening night to the Pistons, which was actually really concerning to me, they didn't look good, but they didn't look terrible, I guess. I would say the thing I'm concerned about with that loss is Andre Drummond had 23 rebounds. And if you have Sabonis and Miles Turner, that is not a good sign. And you drafted Goga Bitadze, who's a 7-footer, and he didn't even get to play. So I think the issue with the Pacers is they have too many good big men. And I don't think you can play with 3 centers. Now, I know they're playing Sabonis the 4, but even then, he's not a 4. He's not quick enough to stay with someone that could play the 4. I just don't think that he's quite as athletic as other guys. And Miles Turner's a great athlete, but he's definitely a center. I don't know how the Pacers are going to figure this out with Goga Bitadze and kind of how they play him. But I do think at some point they should trade Sabonis or Turner and get a nice role player, or maybe even you can package them with someone else and get a star. You've already got Oladipo. It's all about duos this year. It's not super teams, so you got a chance if you get another solid player next to Oladipo. The Knicks is the last team in the Eastern Conference, so we're almost there. I really like the Knicks. I think they're going to have a bad year probably. But for them, the only thing they can really hope for is some development out of their younger guys like Mitchell Robinson. I really like him. I think he's going to be a great player, a lot of length. He's just kind of a raw talent. RJ Barrett looked good in opening night. He had 21 points, and I like him. I think in the preseason and summer league, you did not see him at his best. I feel like he took too many threes. He just needs to stick to what he's good at and stick to transition. He's a big guy. He's great on defense, but people don't realize how big he is. He's like 6'6", 6'7", and he's like filled out. So he is an NBA-ready player. And I see him improving throughout the year, and I like the Knicks, I guess. I've got no issue with them, but I don't see them being a great team. And so this year, I guess just to kind of wrap it all up, I would say my contenders out of the East are, well, at least my surprise contender would be the Heat. I really like the Heat. The Sixers, I think they probably have the best chance out of all these teams to make it. I just feel like injuries could fall one way or another, and then they're kind of done. I really like the Sixers, the Heat, the Bucks, Giannis, great team overall. And then, honestly, I would say maybe the Celtics, maybe the Nets, just depending on how Kyrie plays and if he is able to buy in to the system with those other guys. And then I don't see the Pacers in the finals, but I could see them in the conference finals. So that's kind of my list of just the Eastern Conference teams and how I kind of view them, at least for this year. And I'm looking forward to a great NBA season. And I'll be working on a Western Conference one of these So just let me know if you've got like a favorite team, or if you said something, or if you think differently from me, I guess. Just let me know. And yeah. Make sure to follow AP Sports on Instagram. Been posting a lot. And yeah, thanks for listening.